What happened in those 200 years in Underworld? Well, best I can do is a single week period taking place 1.5 years after the maximum acceleration phase began, as the Black Emperors are scheming to throw the Human Empire and the Dark Territory into chaos. That's right, Moon Cradle content coming right up. Welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your best source of Sword Art Online information, and this is yet another Sword Art Online Explained featuring the opening sequence of SAO Unleash Blading's 3rd year. Make sure to subscribe for more deep dives on SAO and check out Amazon and Book Depository links in the description if you're interested in reading the light novels for yourselves. But if you want easily digestible information from me instead, let's cast away the sly foxes spreading misinformation and get on with this opening explained. Which, I must begin with a disclaimer here. This is not an episode explained like my War of Underworld stuff was. It is an opening explained, which means you'll be getting spoiler information specifically from the Moon Cradle side story. Bear that in mind before moving forward. I know some of you are lost on the context of this opening specifically, so I'll start by clarifying that. This is the opening sequence for the 3rd year of the mobile gacha game Sword Art Online Unleash Blading, previously known as Alicization Rising Steel in the West and Alicization Blading in Japan. They decided to change their title because the game was no longer focused on the Alicization arc, but rather adapting the Moon Cradle side story as well as progressive Ariowa Starless Night movie tie-in content, and thus wanted to avoid brand confusion and go for a more general title. As such, in the opening, while it is predominantly focused on the Moon Cradle content, it also features minor stuff from progressive as well as some other stuff, all of which we'll cover too in this opening explained, and I'll make sure to point out what is relevant to Moon Cradle and what is not. The opening song that I cannot feature in this video due to copyright issues is Gyakyo Spectrum by Asuka, so you can watch our English sub translation of it by clicking the icon on the top right. It is quite the amazing song that's about moving forward after significant loss. And for those of you who have questions as to what Moon Cradle is, we got that covered in an introduction video on the Wikia, so you can go watch that instead. No, it's not about Star King and the 200 years, so stop listening to random gibberish from internet foxes that spout at you. We start the opening with Kirito on the hill that is quite iconic to Alicization, the same hill we saw the Ruli trio happily enjoy their time together, as well as the hill we have seen Alice push the wheelchair of Kirito in the beginning of War of Underworld. However, you can clearly see Kirito is in his black worm coat from Sword Art Online, and that has no significance in regards to Moon Cradle, of course. It's what the game thought would look cool, maybe, and technically they can get away with it because they are not obligated to stick to Moon Cradle content with this opening, as it is a bit of a mix with other content at times, but maybe, just maybe, it is on purpose. Let's have a look at the following shots. We get a quick look at Stacia Asuna, which is a truly bizarre choice, you know. If you decide to show Kirito in black worm coat, why not show Asuna in her KOB outfit too? But then we also get a quick glimpse at the remaining Integrity Knights post-War of Underworld. Well, not all of them. We are only shown Renly Synthesis 27, Scheta the Silent aka Synthesis 12, Fanatio Synthesis 2, Deusolbert Synthesis 7, potentially Renly's Dragon Kazenui in the back there, as well as the game original Edith Synthesis 10. We're of course missing Alice, who is no longer in Underworld, Berkuli, Dakira and Eldrie, who are dead, Fizel and Linel, who are for some reason not included here, I don't know, and the remaining whirling blades of Fanatio, who are not here because nobody even cares or remembers about them. All in all, the sequence feels more like a symbolic shot about those who are left behind immediately after the defeat of Gabriel Miller, which would explain why Kirito is still in his black worm coat. The next portion I absolutely love. It is all about the loss that has been suffered, as well as having to move forward with what is left for Kirito. We see both Quinella and Cardinal, Alice walking away from Kirito, followed by Shinon and Lifo, who are obviously no longer in Underworld. Last but not least, it is Yujiro, whose face we cannot even see in the reflection unlike the others, the one that puts the most weight on Kirito's shoulders. Not walk away, but disappear into the horizon, fading away into the light. It's such a beautiful shot, as he is the only one who actually no longer exists in any plane at all. Compared to those who walk away, of course, you know, Quinella and Cardinal are also dead. But this leads to Kirito turning around and seeing those who are left behind. Again, same ones as the shot before. Why do they not care about the murder lollies? And with that, we are getting to the blink and you'll miss sections. We have tons of cool flashing line art animation here, and you'll also see some skill names show up. Deadly Sins being quite the high level one-handed sword skill, a 7-hit combo, which was used back in Mother's Rosario, and Vertical Square is a common 4-hit skill for Kirito. On the top of my mind, I can immediately point you towards Kirito vs Volo Levantine fight in Alicization running. The skill specifically was beautifully and accurately animated in that scene as well, which is usually a rare sight for the anime adaptation. And I'll double down on that little piece of trivia that anime is rarely accurate with how they're animating stuff, by just pointing out the fact that while the skill written there is Vertical Square, which is a DPS skill on a single target, the skill they have decided to animate in the line art is actually Horizontal Square, which is its non-DPS AoE crowd control counterpart instead. Then we get a quick glimpse at Kirito fighting lizardman enemies, which you'll recognize from the Aincrad opening, which is a reference to the Floor 74 mobs in and of itself. Then of course, more flashing shots. The skill by Kirito appears to be the one-hit dashing skill Sonic Leap. While I will refrain from commenting on Asuna's skill, given the inconsistencies of skill animation, the amount of hits make me want to go the 8-hit combo Star Splash, but knowing it's the anime, it may as well be something simpler, like the 4-hit Quadruple Pain, which is a bit more iconic for Asuna. But we also get to see Mito here that I cannot say anything about really. We still don't know if scythes are a completely separate weapon type or if they're a subtype of an existing category like axes or spears. It was a movie original edition entirely. But that leads us into a shot of Asuna and Mito fighting some little Nepenthes, which if you have seen the movie, you know it is a critical scene. Of course, little Nepenthes originally being from the first day side story, where Kirito almost got killed by another beta tester shortly after abandoning Klein. More line art, we see Egil smashing down, Klein pulling his katana and unleashing a swing, Lifa going for a slash, Shinon going for a shot, which leads us into a random fight showcase featuring Alice and Edith with no clear enemy in sight, followed by glimpses of Edith, Yu-Gi-Oh! Synthesis 32 casting the Blue Rose Sword memory ability, Alice casting Fragrant Olive Swords, Asuna going for her iconic Mother's Rosario usage in War of Underworld, and finally Kirito with Starbar Stream showing up on the screen. Next up we have another minor progressive area movie glimpse with Asuna and Mito looking at Aincrad from the outside. It's a really nice shot, I really like this one, a symbolic take giving us a cool visual that we don't get to see normally, where the prisoners of the floating castle looking at it to take on the challenge from the outside. Then we just get some standard shots from Aincrad, Alo and Gun Gale Online, and oh my god, what are they feeding Egil? That does not look healthy at all, but the main cast is not the only showcase here, as we get to see the Sleeping Knights without Yuki of course. This is followed by Eiji, or rather Nautilus, in a cathedral with Yuna mural right behind him that makes you wonder whether Eiji is guarding Yuna here or if Yuna is portrayed as Eiji's guardian angel. The double meaning certainly makes the shot even more beautiful than it is. We see a light cube being assaulted by lightning, which above all else is probably just meant as a cool transition without any particular meaning, but if you really want me to force the meaning here, considering the switch from the good people to the bad people, you know, you can take it as a clash of contrasting ideals perhaps, or someone putting a strain on someone's floodlight, and that person getting strained may just be this new Dark Knight that we have never seen before. Let's clear this up immediately. This Dark Knight is a completely game original character and is not from the light novels at all. We will have to wait and see how she factors into the story, as the game aims to cover the story of Moon Cradle and actually go ahead and craft a game original sequel to it following the Black Emperor's plotline that was left open at the end of Moon Cradle. But we do see a little bit more about her in this opening and we'll get to it shortly. We cut to a mountain goblin who has killed a human with a knife, supposedly, and I'm surprised they explicitly showed an exact scene here. Of course, they covered that part in the game already, but they are showing the exact event while showing a completely different setting, which is actually a trend in this opening. What we are seeing here is the mountain goblin Oroi witnessing the body of Yazan, the housekeeper of a hotel he was staying at, with 3 of his buddies as part of the peacekeeping agreements that aim to create a common bond between the human empire and the Dark Territory by opening up the borders for tourism and trade. This incident is what ignites the core conflict of Moon Cradle by actors aiming to destroy any chance of peace between the two lands. And the first of those actors we see right in the next shot as minions lift their heads and a hooded figure jumps into the void and disappears. As I warned, we're going full spoilers here. This person is Hozaika Istavarieth, as it's later revealed in the story, the former emperor of the Eastern Empire, supposedly confirmed dead during the attempted rebellion of the Four Empires against the newly formed Human Unification Council. He was the one who kidnapped Scheta and Iskhahn's baby, Lisetta, and tried to have Iskahn execute Kirito in exchange for the safety of Lisetta, but later perished thanks to Ronye's efforts and so far has been confirmed dead for good. At least as far as we know again. We get a shot of Edith looking into the nothingness because she presumably has nothing to do with the story until it goes full original. Similarly, we get shots of Ronye and Tiese, as well as the two Integrity Knights introduced in Moon Cradle, Nergius Synthesis 16 and Entokia Synthesis 18. I feel like this is a bit of a disservice to Ronye and Tiese here, as they have a really big role to play in Moon Cradle. Heck, Ronye is the main character of the story, so them getting relegated to the same still shots here as Nergius and Entokia, who are literally just introduced and pretty much left at that, it's a bit of a letdown. While they do have one more shot, it still feels like a massive disservice to their involvement in the plot. But again, I can chalk this up to being a symbolic shot or something they have planned for the future, an event very similar to the one where Kirito went against Gabriel Miller, as we see streaks above converging to a single point, as the Night Sky Sword is once again sucking up the spatial resources for its memory release ability, or someone else perhaps sucking all that energy for something game story original. We'll see about that. Because while the cuts are a bit too frantic here, if they are to be believed, it paints a different picture than that initial assumption, as we see our Dark Knight look up and then turn around, while Kirito is also looking at something but then turns around. And mind you, it does not look like it is Kirito who is sucking up the spatial resources here. In fact, it certainly does look like the Dark Knight and Kirito were looking at each other first, but then turning their gaze towards this gentleman sitting on his throne instead, so perhaps he is the one doing some spatial resource absorption. Who knows, until the game actually decides to adapt the stuff it wants to adapt and then go original whenever that's supposed to be. But again, we know this gentleman has quite the interest for intricate sacred arts, as he is yet another one of the supposedly dead emperors, Cruiga Norlangarth, the former emperor of the Northern Empire. And this is most certainly hinting at their planned original content following Moon Cradle as well, because for all we know, the only time we see Cruiga Norlangarth in his throne is a flashback / nightmare of Ronye from when they took the life of him together with Tiese and the eventual help of Deusolbert. Well, it is a massive plot point as to how the three confirmed dead emperors came back to life. We also know both Hozaika Istavarieth and Cruiga Norlangarth were once again confirmed dead at the end of Moon Cradle, including their Horcruxes. So if we are to believe this is a hint for the original content, they'll be twisting the rules even further to allow him to come back again, and in pristine condition no less, not as the way he initially came back. You wouldn't be able to see such a sharp and clean looking gentleman in front of you if that was the case again. What I find funny is that Kirito is holding the blue rose sword in his offhand. Those of you who do not know may be confused why that is a problem, but at the end of volume 20 it is Tiese who receives the blue rose sword, as she is promoted to being an actual Integrity Knight along with Ronye. So what's happening here is that they are either significantly overhyping the single moment Kirito is supposed to have with Cruiga at the end of Moon Cradle, where they don't even exactly fight, or they are hinting at their future plans, in which case he technically should not have the blue rose sword. It's something I would have just mentioned and moved on normally without speaking too much over it, but it does have me curious because they actually did pay attention to it in a later cut here when Kirito is fighting the Dark Knight and he has to use a one-handed style because he no longer has a second sword to dual wield with. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, we'll return to Kirito vs Cruiga Norlangarth anyways later in this video. We get a lovely cut of Scheta holding Lisetta and Fanatio holding Berche, followed by the chorus giving us the absolute power couple Iskahn and Scheta going up against minions, an obvious reference to the Obsidia Palace events of volume 19, and yes, Scheta indeed no longer has a weapon she uses and goes full close quarters much like Iskahn, although a significantly different take and much more elegant as she is. A very cool Ronye and Tiese action moment, which isn't exactly a direct reference to anything as these two never fight basic minions together. The entire shot is a beautiful showcase of their double chain attacks. You may think of this like a combination of Kirito's Encarnate style and how the whirling blades of Fanatio fought together. They are using combo attacks of the Encarnate style, but aren't going for high combos to not leave themselves too vulnerable. Instead, they're not even using what you would recognize as a switch, but rather are fighting so closely together in tandem that they're basically acting as a single unit. There are also more examples of this, not specifically tied to sword skills, involving sacred arts instead, so it is good to see being referenced in this opening. The next shot is incredibly confusing given the context of Moon Cradle. We see Renly and Deusolbert fighting some mountain goblins, which simply cannot happen at all, because as things stand, there simply is peace among all residents of Underworld, and while the Dark Emperors, as Ronye calls them, they use a loophole to circumvent the taboo index and thus the seal of the right eye, they're pretty much the only ones who can due to their position of power. Nobody else, let alone a measly mountain goblin foot soldier, can ever be in a position to do such a thing that would attract the hostility of actual Integrity Knights, and it's even questionable how much the Integrity Knights would even be allowed to do, as they too have been ordered by their superiors, as in the current ruling party, the Human Unification Council, to not harm demi-humans at all. So even Integrity Knights who are not bound by the taboo index would still not be able to fight the goblins in this time of peace, and they would be stopped by the seal of the right eye if they attempted to do so, unless they receive new different orders. I don't think they are thinking of going into such large scale of a shitstorm brewing, so I'm just gonna assume this is just a random action shot and does not particularly hint at anything. And yes, if it's meant to hint at anything, it's beyond the contents of Moon Cradle, as none of the knights do anything at all throughout the entire Moon Cradle. And this is also followed by Fanatio, Asuna and Kirito unleashing their own weapons and abilities, Kirito using a single hand of course, and above you can see a shitload of minions if you look carefully. As I said, I do believe these are relatively random action shots just for the sake of it. I do not think they're gonna go for a full-scale war in their sequel story, but the opening kinda really wants you to believe that that's gonna happen, but hey, we then get the fight between Kirito and the Dark Knight, going up against each other and then cutting into the throne room of Cruiga Norlangarth. It seems like the Dark Knight is under the orders of Cruiga, and it appears he is no longer residing in the Human Empire either, which rules out the possibility that the Kirito vs Cruiga confrontation is the one from Moon Cradle. You see, the Norlangarth villa is in quite the lush area of the Empire, surrounded by a forest, and it is kinda quite destroyed at the end of Moon Cradle. But here we see Ronye and Asuna looking up towards a castle that's high on top of a mountain, quite clearly in the dark territory based on the look of the land. We can see the forest around the castle, but where Ronye and Asuna are standing, it sure does not look like the fertile lands of the Human Empire. And last but not least, Kirito suddenly receives the Bullro sword back as he goes on to fight the giant incarnate Cruiga Norlangarth, once again very similar to the final fight of War of Underworld, which is again not from Moon Cradle, it has to be their original content. All in all, it's a really nice opening, but it is quite the head-scratching one as well. Either they want to pull all the cliches in their new original story just to be overly dramatic, you know, bringing back all the dead again, actually creating another War of Underworld, giving Kirito the Bullro sword back because dual wielding is cool or something, creating an Alice altar because they cannot monetize Alice in their story at this point, creating Gabe 2.0, etc. Or most of the trailer is just not representative of anything at all and is just filled with what they thought would look cool instead. It isn't uncommon for your opening sequences to have some events that never really happen here and there, but having most of your opening be so far-fetched that would be a little weird, so I am banking on their original story after the events of V20 just going full bonkers with all the cliches, I guess. But we'll see how all these plans play out, especially considering how Reki in his volume 20 afterward is hinting towards how this Black Emperor's plotline is lasting over 100 years and potentially seems to have plans to tie it into the rebellion on Admina in United Ring. I have my doubts the game will make any sense at all in this context. Not that it has to, you know, it's literally pulling all the stops to avoid dying at this point, so they will do what they can to look as interesting as possible. Granted, they do have a bump in revenue for the first time in 2 years in the past 2 months, starting with the release of the new opening, but with the barrage of new limited units and introduction of very free-to-play and new player unfriendly events, they instantly received their hate back from their core crowd. They promised Moon Cradle anime scenes, which they only managed to deliver 2 of in the span of an entire year, which led to an incredible amount of let down Moon Cradle fans, as Volume 19 is now completely over in the game. It's certainly interesting to see how far they will be going with PR alone, while having a very unfriendly game and a track record of unfulfilled promises. In the meanwhile, I'll be here looking forward to the next opening in a year, hoping Asuka comes out with another banger like this one. If you made it this far, comment Black Emperors to let me know. If you enjoyed this explained, please do leave a like, follow me on Facebook and Twitter for the fastest news possible. SAO The First Day merch among others are available on my Spring page. A huge thanks to all my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.